Okay, so today I want to share with you something that I learned in heaven about the Holy Spirit. I learned this in heaven. I'm just going to be transparent with you, as I always am. I just don't know. It's too much work to try to put it into structures, and just so much easier just to be transparent. But anyway, I learned this in heaven about the Holy Spirit. When I was in heaven, I was with the ministering angels this one time. It's been, again, 5 years now. So I've had a lot of experiences now in heaven, just learning and going through parts of heaven, just being shown to me. Anyway, I was with the ministering angels, and they said to me something that I just now have come to understand. And so they said to me, Teri, you have to get used to the whirlwinds. And I was like, what? You have to get used to the whirlwinds. And I was like, how do you get used to a whirlwind? That's a tornado, isn't it? How does anybody get used to the whirlwind? Well, I know that Elijah was taken up in a chariot in a whirlwind. And so I thought, well, Elijah got used to the whirlwind. And so I did a video about the mountain of the north, but I'm going to share a lot more on that. But I found myself at one point going to the mountain of the north in heaven, and the Lord had me by the hand. He took me to the beginning of it, and it's like a journey, And he said, Elijah will show you this place. So I started my journey. It's in the mountain of the north, part 1, part 2, part 3, if you want to hear that journey. Anyway, so at one point, and normally you just, it's not like having a conversation on earth with people where you could think, well, I'm going to ask them this, or I'm going to ask that. It's not like that. You're just there. It's more precisely like having a dream at night, only you're awake and you're worshiping. So you're in spirit, awake, but you're worshiping. And so like as a dream at night, you don't control your dream. You're in a dream and you're living it, you're responding in the dream, but you're not thinking like, oh, when I go to sleep, if I ever dream this dream, I'm going to ask, what is that? It doesn't work that way. It's just not how it works. So, but just by chance, it happened that when I started to walk with Elijah towards the mountain of the north, that it came to mind about what the whirlwind, the ministering angels told me about getting used to the whirlwind, and I knew Elijah knew about the whirlwind, so I said to him, Elijah, the ministering angels told me that I had to get used to the whirlwind. How do I get used to the whirlwinds? And he said, keep your eyes on Jesus. It was kind of just a pat answer. He didn't give me an answer. And so, it was what it was. And I still, all this time, and I then went to the backside. I went front ways, through the path to the mountain of the north in heaven, and experienced all this stuff. And then I found myself in the throne room, and then Daniel was there, and Father said, Daniel is going to take you and show you something. So Daniel took me, which was, it's funny because in heaven, it's not what a person looks like. And they tell you that on earth, don't judge people by what they look like. But in heaven, it's an absolute. You don't really notice what anybody looks like. You know their nature. I can tell you the nature. Daniel, I've never seen innocence in a person on earth like I've seen innocence in Daniel. At one point, I kind of looked up at him from like underneath. I don't know quite how he did that. And he was so innocent that it was like heartbreaking almost. It was so beautiful. But anyway, he took me to the mountain of the north on the backside. I did a video on that called the Whirlwinds of God. And anyway, recently, I have been with the Holy Spirit. I just did a video about knowing the Holy Spirit. It has a butterfly on it on the YouTube. What do they call it? Whatever, the picture. So I've been with the Holy Spirit, getting to know the Holy Spirit, the person of the Holy Spirit. And so this is what happened. I found myself in Israel, in spirit. This always just happens once I'm in worship, deep worship. The Spirit comes upon me. I'm in worship. I'm in the Spirit, gone in worship. And I found myself in Israel, walking in Israel. And suddenly, a whirlwind starts to pick up next to me. Starts to pick up. And then it picked up and it went into the air. And as it went in the air, it kind of changed into a beautiful white bird, the biggest beautiful white bird you've ever seen. And it flew across Israel, and then it landed on Mount Hermon, which is representative of the mountain in the north in heaven. Israel is a type and a shadow of the heavens. And anyway, so when it got to the top of Mount Hermon, then it sort of changed again into a cloud, but still had some of the wings of the dove, of the bird, on the out parts of the cloud. And out of the cloud, it was like a pouch inside the cloud that opened up and released an army of people on top of Mount Hermon. Well, this is the congregation on the north sides in the Bible. You can look for that in the Bible. You'll see it. Congregation on the north sides, the congregation of the north. It is spirits of just men made perfect. It is the remnant. It is a remnant of God. It is people that have laid their lives down. I just did a video on Paul, a side of the Holy Spirit, that surrender. They are compelled to live for Him. They are compelled to die for Him. They are compelled to He is everything to them. They died to self. And it's the army of God. It is the army of God. And not everybody is of that army. Not everybody wants to be in that army. Not everybody is the remnant. Not everybody wants to be the remnant. Some people are very happy on the outer skirts. Some people are very happy, I don't understand it. I don't. I don't understand. I'm sorry. I can't say I don't understand it. I do understand it. But I understand being compelled to have all of Him. Being compelled and desire to know Him fully. Anyway, so this army was released. I was one of them. It was an army of people on the top of Mount Hermon. So I realized, when I was in that vision, in the spirit, in that vision, I was shaking. I was crying. I was groaning. I groan a lot in the spirit, most of the time. But and it was hard to come out of it. It was hard to come out of. The Holy Spirit didn't just leave like most days He does. He stayed on me. And I believe He stayed on me for a reason, to let me know it was a move of His Spirit. It was a move of the Spirit moving on me, in me. And I realized there is the move of the Spirit, and there is being moved by the Spirit, and there is a whirlwind where the whirlwinds, you've got to get used to being moved by the Spirit. And how do you get used to being moved by the Spirit? You just release yourself. You let go of the conditioning of man, of, oh, I'm not supposed to cry, or, oh, well, what if somebody hears me, or, well, what if somebody's looking, or, well, my neighbors might, or my children are in the other room, what if they hear me, they'll think I'm crazy, or let go of all of that. Let go of constraining Him, in the sense of not allowing Him to move in and through you. Just release to Him. Just release. And so we have to get used to allowing Him to move in us. I had to get used to the groaning in the Spirit, because sometimes it feels like I'm giving birth, or like it's a groaning like a whale, I can't make it happen. I can't. I can't. I've got to be in spirit, and Holy Spirit come upon me and bring that groaning. I can't do it. I just can't. Nor can I make myself cry when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. So I'm not going to stop it. It's like the 10 virgins, there's 5 that had their oil lit. The Holy Spirit was alive in them, moving in them, and 5, no, there was no fire, there was no oil, there was no fire lit in their lamps. And when I looked up the word quench, do not quench the Holy Spirit. That word quench means to put out. So don't put out the Holy Spirit. Don't allow Him to be put out in your life. Allow Holy Spirit, to the fire of God, to move and live and move you into the Spirit where you are being. I have a saying I always pray, move me into being. Move us into being, because that's where life is. Life is in the Spirit. It's not in the carnal. It's not in the intellect. It's not. As a matter of fact, we get into trouble when we move in the intellect. Myself too. I'll tell you, there's sometimes I'll think, oh, that's a great idea, and it's like, it's not a great idea. And then it can be moved by the Spirit. I haven't completely, I'm not where it's completely, His thoughts are totally my thoughts, and my thoughts are His thoughts, because I think it's a long journey, and it's a utter, complete surrendering day and hours spent, and no distractions of, TV or doing this, or it's a different life. Anyway, so we have to not quench the Spirit, put out the Spirit like the 10 virgins. 5 were invited into the wedding feast of the bride, and 5 were not. The bride has to make herself ready. The bride has to know Holy Spirit, has to know how to yield herself to Him, has to know how to, who He is, what He feels like, when He's saying something, when He's, moving, like His nature, His personality. I don't know that. I'm learning that, and I'm sharing what I'm learning with you guys. And anyway, and so we have to learn how to move with Him. And then there comes, the whirlwinds. The whirlwinds are the great power moves of God. The parting of the Red Sea. The taking of man from earth into the heavens where he disappears. And these are great, the whirlwind of God, great moves of God. A lot of times the judgment of God, that, earthquake, or, not always judgment, but sometimes. And their judgments are meant for our enemies. But we get caught up in it because we're on the wrong side of the camp in our understanding, or in our desire, our humanism, whatever. But getting used to the whirlwinds of God, I finally realized that it was the great, powerful moves of God. That's why the ministering angel said to me, Teri, you've got to get used to the whirlwinds of God. The great movement of God. When God parts the Red Sea, when an earthquake comes, or He raises the dead, you've got to get used to moving in that, living in that whirlwinds of God. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because we have to get used to that. We got to get used to moving with Him. I've got a butterfly flying out there. It's so beautiful. I know I have to show you guys my butterfly garden. But they were there weren't many caterpillars and stuff, but she's definitely flying right at the window. It's so funny how the Lord and it's so funny how it's such a beautiful example of the transformation of the butterfly, the caterpillar, the chrysalis, the hanging in the jay, and turning into a beautiful butterfly, and how the enemy tries to steal that. Like he's tried to steal our rainbow. He tries to steal the butterfly and make it, be a symbol of something so horrifying. But I just think we have to take it back. It doesn't belong to Him. He can make His own, give Him a wasp, whatever, a wasp, let that be His, hides in the fig fruit. Anyway, whatever. But, I know. Okay, so I just want to share that with you about getting used to the whirlwinds, the moves of the Holy Spirit. That we would just begin to be brave and, I look around in the church. I've been here in the New States. I've been going to a lot of churches, and they're all beautiful in their own way. It's the foundation that God's had them to build. And but one thing I notice is that worship. A lot of worship is taking place with their eyes open, and And we have to put ourselves in a position that we get lost in the Spirit. And that's not as easy to do with your eyes open. You tend to see the carnal and be still attached to this normal earthly realm that we live in, which we do live in. But when we worship God, we enter into the Spirit. We worship God in spirit and in truth. And a lot of times that happens with our eyes closed. To enter in, to enter in, to enter in, to push, to push, to push, to push into the Spirit. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys about these moves of the Holy Spirit and how the ministering angels said to me what they meant when they said, you have to get used to the whirlwinds of God. Anyway, okay, that's it for today. God bless you. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.